I like speaking at Telemiracle things because I can bring my beer on stage.
Woo!
So for those of you that don't know Max and our family, we live in Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan. We live about 15 minutes on an acreage west of town, and we've lived there our whole lives. I'm so humbled anytime I'm asked to speak at something like this tonight. I can't imagine a better group of people to spend time with or to be around. Can we just have a round of applause for the food, because it was amazing. Yeah, it's like really good steak. Apparently they marinated it in Coke, so try that. So we are asked here to speak tonight about our family and our family's story. But first I want to talk about the people in this room who are the kinsmen and the Kinettes. The kinsmen or the Kinettes are people who make it possible for families like ours to have an organization to turn to for help when there are no other options. It is the volunteers who give of their time, energy, and talents that make nights like tonight possible. It is time they willingly spend away from their families. Sorry, I had to write this down because I'm really nervous. Long nights taking pledges, budget meetings that go on for hours, and days spent canvassing communities, along with so much more. What the kinsmen and Kinettes do is the definition of selflessness. It's giving of yourself so that others can benefit. For that, I thank you, and my family thanks you. And we promise you that our family will always have a spirit of paying it forward. Can we please have a huge round of applause for the kinsmen and Kinettes in this room tonight? So our journey started in 2007. My husband, Terrence, and I had just gotten married on July 28th. Megan Smith, she's a Kinette here, she was in my bridal party. We had just bought our first home together, and we were looking forward to growing our family and excited for our future. On August 10th, 2007, just 12 days after our wedding, our son Max was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, also known as SMA. Max was 2.5 years old. SMA is a genetic disease affecting parts of the nervous system that controls voluntary muscle movement. SMA is caused by a mutation in the survival motor neuron gene. In a healthy person, this gene produces a protein that is critical to the function of the nerves that control our muscles. Without it, those nerve cells cannot properly function and eventually die, leading to debilitating and often fatal muscle weakness. Children with SMA often have difficulty performing basic functions of life, like breathing, swallowing. However, SMA does not affect a person's ability to think, learn, or build relationships with others, as well shown by your huge harem of friends. As you can imagine, our world was rocked. We were catapulted into a completely new world of therapies, specialists, doctors, surgeons. We were told to be prepared for acquiring a walker and eventually a wheelchair. Max would be having his legs casted often for ankle-foot orthotics. Surgeries were being discussed to address the eventual scoliosis that would set in. And I was making and receiving what felt like millions of phone calls and emails a day. And yet I felt like I had nowhere to turn and no one to talk to. Every phone call or email I sent or received was in response to someone, somewhere, needing something from us. They needed to know our family history, the way my health when I was pregnant, Max's health card number. They wanted money for equipment, availability for appointments. That time in our lives was a whirlwind of emotion, fear, and exhaustion. When Max moved to needing a wheelchair full-time and grew to the point where transferring him in and out of his chair to the vehicle was not an option anymore, we knew we had to purchase an accessible vehicle. And despite my husband's amazing welding skills, we had a truck at the time, and I very clearly remember this day because I was so frustrated. I came home and I'm like, man, we gotta stop feeding that kid. He just keeps growing. I can't lift him anymore. and I was having a really hard day, and Terrence said, okay, I'll figure something out. I said, okay, I don't know what you're gonna figure out, but okay. So I put the kids to bed and I went to bed and Terrence didn't come to bed. So I fell asleep, got up in the morning, I'm having coffee and Terrence walks in from the shop and I'm looking at him, what are you doing? And he's like, come out to the shop. So my husband had used old car parts and a winch from a quad and welded a lift for our son's wheelchair to put in the back of our truck. So that did us for a little while. But eventually it got to the point where we knew we were going to have to purchase an accessible vehicle. All I could think about was how. How are we going to do this? We had just sold our starter home to purchase a larger open plan home for Max so that he could move around the house freely in his chair. We had to add a deck to the house with 3 different ramps. Our travel costs to Saskatoon, Regina, Edmonton, to different children's hospitals and specialists were adding up, and it looked at best bleak, and it seemed impossible. Late at night, I started looking at the Telemiracle website, and it was something that I swore I would never do, because I never wanted to have to ask for help, and I never had to do it before, so I was really prideful. I wanted to be able to provide Max with everything that he needed on our own, like every parent does. But I was also extremely tired and weary of shouldering a weight that no parent should have to handle alone. I finally printed out the application and stuffed it into my purse for months. When I sat down to do the application, I was so overwhelmed. I pushed through it because no matter how hard it was for me to have to ask, it wasn't a good excuse for me not to do something to meet Max's needs. Once the application was sent in, we waited with bated breath for a response. And then it came. A phone call came. A phone call from a person who didn't want anything from me, but wanted to do something for Max. And Leanne is here tonight. Your kind and understanding way with me and our phone conversations and the way that you listened will never be forgotten. And I can't imagine having a better person on the other end of that phone being in such a vulnerable place. So thank you for that, Leanne. Speaking with Leanne was a feeling I'll never forget. It was light entering a pitch black room, knowing I wasn't alone anymore. It was really indescribable. Because that's why we're really here tonight, isn't it? This is why you're bidding on items and writing out checks, not because you want to give people money, but because you want to give people hope. You want to walk beside them and take their hand and maybe carry a little bit of their burden. You're here tonight because you want to help. You want to be the one who opens the door to let that little bit of light in. Telemiracle helped with the conversion of our first accessible van and has just recently agreed to help with a new one. You, each one of you in here, in this room, are helping to do that. When those worries are looked after, it gives our family hope. It frees up my time as a parent to advocate for my child in other ways that are so necessary. But most importantly, it allows us to be a family. I'm going to hand the mic over to Max now so he can tell you a little bit about how having this accessible van has impacted his life. Can we give him a big round of applause? He's a little bit